Hello indie game fans, it's another jam-packed week of new releases, so let's begin with Intravenous 2, the follow-up to a top-down stealth action tactical shooter from 2021 that sure has Hotline Miami vibes, but in addition to the pure violence of the guns, allows you to be a little bit more strategic. That is, until hits the fan. Visually, it looks similar to the first game, but interestingly, has a two-protagonist structure, one of which I believe is the protagonist from the first game as they embark on a mission of revenge, with one looking for answers to his father's kidnapping and the other seeking vengeance for his dead brother. There is the ability to slow down time, 29 weapons and 17 gadgets, along with weapon customization with scopes, silencers and more, even having multiple endings and should be a good one. Untitled Crow Game, aka Just Crow Things, has you playing as a mischievous crow, getting up to all sorts of mischief in this humorous sandbox adventure. You are messing around with the humans, pooping on them, stealing trinkets and making new animal friends, looking like the exact sort of chaos that I'm down for. This comes to us from the developer of Rain on Your Parade, which has a similar vibe, only where you play it as a rain cloud instead, looking to iterate and sharpen ideas from that game and looks like fun. This video is brought to you by Defenders of the Omniverse, a reverse bullet hell roguelite in which heroes and monsters from across space and time battle over the fate of the Omniverse. The most unique thing about this game is the theme and art style, evoking the Saturday morning cartoons from the 1980s, so think Transformers, Thundercats, He-Man and more, with the handcrafted visuals that evokes comic books as well. This has the elements that you have come to know and love from reverse bullet hell roguelites, such as different playable characters, in-run upgrades, swarms of enemies and permanent upgrades between runs, but with one main differentiator being the boss fights. For one, they take place in distinct arenas, with the ultimate boss being Dark Wizard Umbros, who has randomized abilities for each encounter for plenty of replayability. This releases in early access on August 26, 2024, so wishlist the game on Steam via the link in the description below. This next title is an interesting one since it comes to us from Luke Muscat, best known as the designer of Fruit Ninja and Jetpack Joyride, but he has since left Halfbrick and went indie, cataloging his indie dev journey on his YouTube channel, which is a must follow, with this next game being Feed the Deep. This is an underwater Lovecraftian roguelite in which you are diving into claustrophobic looking underwater caves in search of treasure so that you can purchase upgrades to dive deeper, borrowing the resource picking up parts of Domekeeper but with the horror element in which you need to feed an underwater monster to protect the floating cities. Most interestingly, I don't believe there is any direct combat in this game, so the danger comes more from running out of air and drowning, which, granted, is horrifying in its own right, but it's an interesting release for sure. This next title was almost the hidden gem of the week, but I have another game that I want to give the distinction to, so I've bumped Leximan up to this spot, where if the humour in the opening seconds of this trailer is anything to go by, this spelling-based action-adventure game should be awesome. You play as a wizard who uses words to cast spells, often to humorous consequences, although I do wonder if you can play it straight. Your character, however, is a basement wizard banished underground after things happened many years in the past, but when the academy is under attack, it is up to you to save the day. Games like this, if done right, can be excellent and is one of the reasons why I love indie games. Love indie games? Sign up to my newsletter to get a weekly dose of what's hot, along with some news and of course, weekly game giveaways, so if interested, link is in the description below. Here's a more modern looking fancy pants game in which Dawn of Defiance is a survival crafting sandbox title like Valheim, only this time with a Greek mythology theme. You are battling little goblin creatures, and the trailer also shows off a Medusa style gorgon, with a variety of melee and ranged weapons at your disposal. Interestingly, you are transforming from a weak soldier to a godlike anti-hero, even gaining the ability to fly like in Minecraft creative mode when constructing buildings, which, to be fair, would be the best way for you to craft elaborate structures, and the building systems do look quite intensive. Still, it's a survival crafting game, so expect some jank, but the combination of the theme, visuals and genre, it is 2024, year of the survival crafting game after all, might just result in this blowing up in popularity. The developer of Bearnard did reach out, and I wanted to help them along since this looks like a cool concept in which this mixes a 2D side-scrolling platformer with turn-based tactical combat with physics. As mentioned last week, you only see concepts like this in indie games since yes, the closest comparison would be SteamWorld Heist 2 released last week, only instead of steampunk robots, you have a medieval fantasy world instead. Additionally, there's also a deck building element in which you can use cards to create combos to most effectively kill your enemies, and can even make use of the terrain to knock enemy into pits for instant death. Also having RPG leveling in this for some reason, and is not a roguelite, so it's a very cool, weird thing that indie game fans should be aware of. One of the biggest games of 2022 continues to chug along in Cult of the Lamb, releasing the Unholy Alliance free update following a number of other free updates that just makes this such a fantastic experience. This adds local co-op to the game in the form of the goat character in addition to the lamb, but that's not all, also having new buildings and a ton more stuff. And while this week will be the 2nd year anniversary of its release, it is already one of the most popular indie games with a banger Twitter account to boot, so pick up this action roguelike-ish management sim if you have not. This next release might be a little strange since Dadish Collection is a compilation of Dadish 1, 2 and 3, a series of 3 precision platformers that just look so adorable. The developer could have grouped the 3 Steam releases together and promoted it as a bundle, but instead has gone to the effort to make this compilation with, I presume, some sort of launcher or central hub that will not just launch the individual games separately, and maybe will have additional stuff and bonuses if you get this. Roger that. The first-person co-op horror title has been the holy grail for some developers, given the success of games like Phasmophobia, with another developer to try their luck this week with Demonsomnia. Taking place after a nuke went off, radiation has spread and caused creatures to mutate, and you must put on your gas mask to go into the forest, gather key items, and then return to the mansion in order to hunt down a demon that is inhabiting its premises. As such, it mixes both open areas in the forest as well as the claustrophobic rooms of the mansion, which is interesting since developers tend to go one way or the other, but not both, with this looking to play it more seriously due to the body cam found footage horror style perspective. But then again, if you are screwing around with your friends on voice chat, how scary can this be? I like the look of Desvelado, a precision platformer in which you play as a vampire who has to extinguish the candles, dodge the ghosts, and to get to sleep before the sun comes up. It is not a terribly fresh concept in terms of gameplay, but the art and animations look awesome, so I guess it will depend on how it controls, with this having a little bit of a #blood vibe, but of course not as intricately detailed, but still a neat game worth a look. One of the best games of 2023 is back with DREDGE the Iron Rig, a paid DLC that adds the titular location to the world. If you thought that this cosmic horror fishing game wasn't foreboding enough, wait until you get on board this gigantic metal construct, which is funded no less by a mysterious organization. Like the previous DLC, this can be accessed during the main story and it's a side story of its own, so it wouldn't be part of the endgame so to speak. But if you were looking for an excuse to get back into the world of Dredge and discover a new aberration or two, this will be worth picking up. Just a quick one here in Frontline Crisis, a tower defense top-down shooter hybrid that sure looks to be Plants vs Zombies inspired, in which you are fending off enemies who move from right to left. However, you can blanket the entire playfield with your towers and structures, and can actively target enemies with your weapons as well, with a neat pixel art look and will be for fans of the genre. I cannot believe that this game is finally here, since I'm pretty sure that I covered the Kickstarter of God's Gift back in 2018, and boy, what a simpler time that was, in which this is a 2D puzzle platformer whose most direct comparison would be Lemmings. I'm not sure why it took this long to get done, but to be fair, the Kickstarter didn't raise a stupid amount of money, so perhaps the developers were delayed because of that. You have to guide the cultists to the end of the level, with the twist being that you have to sacrifice units to mutate them into eldritch monsters so that you can progress forward, and given that they don't make games like this anymore, this might be of interest. This week also sees the release of Hidden Through Time 2 Discovery, of note since the original was pretty popular, with the sequel not doing as hot, which probably explains why they released this as a standalone title rather than as paid DLC. It has their signature art style and colour palette, in which you are clicking around to search for objects, looking like a very chill time, and is probably one of two exceptions that I have when it comes to games like this, since there are a lot of low quality clones on Steam. I was pretty surprised to see Knights of the Road show up on the list of new releases, since this is penciled in for Saturday, which is not common at all for new releases, and might be due to time zone issues, but still, this throwback 8-bit platformer looks awesome and might be fun. You can see bits of Castlevania and Zelda 2 in this, also extending to modern-ish indie games like Shovel Knight and The Messenger, with the shield in this being the central gimmick. And the developer talks about uncovering secrets and acrobatic platforming, together with the expected combat and boss fights, but due to the look, is the hidden gem of the week. I just so happened to cover the best ninja games 2 weeks ago and had Mute Crimson Plus in there, with Mute Crimson DX being the enhanced extended version of that game with new content. This is an action platformer with a ninja theme, not so much in the stealthy assassin parts of being a ninja, but more of the hack and slash bits, in which you are climbing walls, double jumping and cutting enemies in half. This edition has 2 new worlds with new enemies, bosses and platforming challenges, redone cutscenes, enhanced musical arrangements, parallax backgrounds, a rewind feature, a new unlockable minigame, new secrets and so much more. So if you love a solid action platformer, this will be one to get. There have been a number of interactive toys in recent years, of programs that allow you to mess around and tinker with it without explicit objectives, scores, points, or any win-lose conditions really, with ODDADA looking to be in a similar vein, a chill, music-making toy with an awesome art style that reminds me of children's toys. However, underneath the cutesy visuals is the ability to make your own music track, even being able to save it on an in-game cassette tape and to export it as an audio file, so whether you're a maestro or not, might be fun to tinker around with. There have been a number of tug-of-war strategy games over the years of an effectively side-scrolling perspective with castles on each side, in which you were spawning in units and casting spells for your army to get the advantage, such as in the Epic War games or Bowmaster Prelude on Flash, with a new entry being Operation Polygon Storm. This has a military theme and looks fairly similar to War Pips in concept, but with a different art style, in which you are deploying infantry and armor to defeat your opponent, with minimal micromanagement required, which I think results in units automatically advancing and taking cover, rather than you having to control them like in an RTS, and it looks to have its share of fans. Another strategy title of interest is Overboss, the digital adaptation of a tabletop board game where you play as the villain. You're creating your own dungeon by drafting terrain tiles and recruiting monsters, where placement of tiles affects their scoring, and the monster units on said tiles adds even more. This has a 7.3 rating on Board Game Geek, which is decent, with the pixel art being beautifully translated into a digital version where the various bosses have different special abilities that allow you to change the momentum of the game in your favour and will be for strategy game fans.
Sam and Max, Freelance Police.
Cue up the entrance music!
Here's another title with quite the legacy, since Sam and Max The Devil's Playhouse is the third and final season of the Sam and Max episodic adventure games about a pair of unconventional detectives, with the series dating all the way back to 1993 under the LucasArts banner and then revived in 2007 under Telltale Games, which has since closed down, but the IP managed to find its way back to Skunk Ape Games, headed up by Telltale co-founder Dan Connors as well as members of the original development team, who have been remastering the games. These games have always been well received, so if you enjoy the older style of point-and-click adventure game, this will be the series for you. One of the best kept secrets in the factory building space is the original Shapez, a minimalist title that had you making abstract shapes, with colour, orientation and shape being the most important bits, and the developer is back with Shapez 2, this time taking it into full 3D. The added dimension allows you to build multi-level factories in which elevation is taken into consideration, but is also somewhat abstracted since the factory is in space, so you're not constrained by the physical limits of the world. The core shape-making idea is still present, but I'm sure that there will be new additions and looks absolutely epic in terms of the sheer scale of production, but to what end, I wonder. We also have the Steam release of Shoulders of Giants Ultimate, which I believe did release in some form on the Epic Games Store, being an action roguelite in which your character sits on top of a giant mech. It looks polished and well made, although there's something about the look and UI that makes it look very quote-unquote modern day, like in Fortnite for better or worse, with the third person camera being interesting, although I don't know if that will be enough. Now this is a release that brings me back, since Sins of a Solar Empire 2 is the follow-up to a game from 2008 which had various expansions and DLCs over the years, with the one that people are most likely to be familiar with being Sins of a Solar Empire Rebellion from 2012. This is a real-time strategy title with 4 act elements in which you are commanding fleets of powerful spaceships in real time, but are maneuvering them to explore, expand, exploit and exterminate your enemies for galactic dominance. Developer Ironclad Games was established in 2003 and have managed to survive over the years, with their games doing decently well, and this, like the earlier game, was co-developed with Stardock, and they seem to be keeping costs under control with a small team size of under 20, so for perhaps a more modern take on this idea as compared to a 12-year-old game, this is the title to get, with it pleasantly not being an early access release. Here's a cute little title named Slash Quest, in which a giant sword plays a central role, but not in the way that you would think, since this is not some dark fantasy hack and slash title, but rather one that does look kind of cute. Don't get me wrong, you're still chopping up monsters, but with a much more pleasant look, and it appears that the controls in this are interesting, since the real hero is the sword, and the human is just being dragged along with it, so there might be something special to this game and could be neat. Oh my god, you guys, if you're above a certain age, I'm sure that the nostalgia will instantly come flooding back to you, since the Crimson Diamond has an art style reminiscent of EGA games, representative of early PC games, and they have nailed exactly what they're going for, especially in the pixel art and the colour palette, with the signature red colour for human skin tone, which you can see in games like The Secret of Monkey Island. More than the visuals, however, is the game itself, which centers around the discovery of a massive diamond in a ghost town where mystery is afoot and our heroine has to figure out who has the claim to the diamond. This one's for indie game developers. The free indie game marketing resources are ready, so sign up via the link in the description below to get it in your mailbox. It's a big week, so we are not done just yet, with the top 5 being standout entries in themselves, such as Level 0 Extraction, a game that was delayed about a week to get out of the way of big updates on August 6, which appear to be Helldivers 2 Escalation of Freedom, Fortnite Cross Fall Guys, Apex Legends Season 22, Rocket League Cross Cybertruck, and Dead by Daylight Castlevania, so here is this co-op horror extraction shooter 1 week later. Similar to games like Escape from Tarkov or Lethal Company, you are delving into these facilities in search of loot, then having to extract and get out safely in order to keep it. But watch out for both CPU-controlled monsters, player-controlled ones, and player-controlled mercenaries as your opposition, leading to a high-stakes experience where you cannot trust anyone, which does look like fun with friends. Developer Strange Scaffold continues to knock it out of the park with their next title, I Am Your Beast, being the title of interest here. You play as a special agent type who is fed up after being called back into the field one last time too many times, where declining the job results in a guerrilla war between him and an organization known as the Covert Operations Initiative. This is one part stealth immersive sim, where you are skulking about in the grass or in pipes to get the jump on enemies, but then switches to furious first-person action since there's no reloading in this game, but you can pick up enemy weapons and even throw the empty gun at an enemy to take them out. The action looks awesome and its demo was very well received during the most recent Steam Next Festival, making the full release one to watch.
What you wish for?
I'm pretty excited about Castaway since this retro throwback pixel art action-adventure game sure looks like Zelda, with the big caveat that the developer outright states that this is a smaller experience, having only 3 main dungeons, so don't go expecting a 40-hour experience with this game. Still, combat looks fun and there is variety in the form of 3 weapons in the sword, a pickaxe and a grappling hook. And when you're done with the main game, there is a 50-floor death tower that increases in difficulty for every level you move up, and looks like the perfect palate cleanser in between bigger experiences. By the time you're watching this, the arena action roguelite Nova Drift has released out of early access, one of the most popular games that has been quietly chugging along in the background, and what a state it is in. Plenty of free updates and patches over the 5 years or so of early access since 2019 have resulted in one of the most insane roguelites with over 200 modular upgrades which you can mix and match, which is the fun of this game since how the upgrades slot together and interact with each other encourages you to experiment with them. The game's biggest inspiration is Path of Exile, and it shows with the sheer amount of stuff in this, and the resulting possible builds are as varied as a ship which spams tiny missiles to one that intentionally crashes head-on into enemies. While the art style is pretty minimalist, it does the job for this game, with the 1.0 release adding a final boss and ending sequence among other updates, although I would say that it was already 95% there prior to this patch, so get one of the best roguelites on the market this week, which is an instant Game of the Year contender as well. I love my pixel art games, which is why Arco got my attention in the first place since I follow artist Frenak on Twitter, who always shares gorgeous pieces, and then I found out that they were making a game which is published by Panic, the untitled Goose Game people, so that got my attention. Even more interesting is that this is a real-time tactical RPG in which the action unfolds in real time, but you can pause the action to issue commands, having to anticipate what the enemy is going to do and to counter accordingly. It also tells 3 intertwining stories based on 3 different characters, which are forged in bloodshed and united by revenge, with there also being magic in this world as well, but my god, the pixel art in this is to die for, so it gets top billing. Watch this video for more of the best pixel art games.